In this week's episode of On Air, we get to talk with Gage Hall, the owner, founder of Stoke Therapy. Gage is former Army veteran, current Army veteran, and current member of the fire service. He's a strong advocate for yoga and other action adventure sports and how he can use those modalities to support peer support, quite frankly, across the country. So Gage Hall, firefighter, veteran, rocker of the sweet mustache.
Welcome to Yoga for First Responders On Air, where we break down yoga, neuroscience, resilience, and public safety in a manner that's authentic, educational, and most importantly, entertaining and lighthearted. I'm YFFR's founder, Olivia Mead. As a yoga instructor and neuroscience enthusiast, I'm passionate about supporting first responders and anyone looking to improve their overall human performance. Each week, we'll dive into a new topic and often bring on expert guests to share their insights and experiences. But we'll also keep it real and share our own stories and struggles along the way. So whether you're a first responder or seeking to master the science of mental and physical resilience, this podcast is your ultimate guide to triumph over life's challenges with unbreakable strength and unwavering fortitude. By pressing play, your training has begun.
Gage, my man, I'm excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm honored to be here. It is a little jarring not having you be my instructor for yoga for first responders, but super stoked to be here and talk to you more about what I got going on my end.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's I tell people like I'm instructing people this week in Tucson, and I love teaching and working with cops and firefighters and medics and teaching them this stuff. And it was very clear from day one. I noted you at instructor school that we had a few weeks back that you were like locked in from day one, like shaking your head and interested in what we were doing, even from like our introduction, which is weird. And so I just was noticing that, man, from the back of the room. And I was like, what is this guy all about? Like because most people, like when we start talking about this stuff, they're like sitting back in their chair, arms crossed, like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Quite frankly. And right. you were like locked in, like from minute number one, I noticed actually. And so I clocked it. I didn't have a whole lot of conversation, just kind of watched it, felt it out. But I was excited to get to know more about you as the week went on. And I'm actually really excited for this conversation because this is more of a deep conversation than we even got to have at instructor school because the schedule is just so packed. Dude, every single minute of 50 hours. Like let's be honest. This is a warning for anybody coming to YFFR instructor school. If you think you're going to get out an hour and a half early, like you do at most trainings with a schedule that's booked every minute for 50 hours, wrong.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I thought was going to go on. And was absolutely incorrect. So, it's not like you guys were dragging your feet either, just trying to drag stuff out. It was all incredible information. And, you absolutely made the most of every single minute we had there. So,
yeah, no, I appreciate that feedback. And the other thing that we noted about Gage, and we'll get into your story and who you are, but I noted this too when we first pulled up the very first day. There's this big white van at the end of the parking lot. So now that Olivia is back, now that Olivia has joined us in Olivia's grand fashion style, she's here. She has arrived.
Excellent.
So busting in.
He comes busting in, eating pizza, like, I'm here, folks.
Hell yeah.
I was telling Gage, I was like, we're not together. And so I wasn't 100% certain what kind of mood Olivia was going to be in. But if I knew that she was in good spirits, without having the headache that she's got going on, I was going to bust her chops for showing up late. And so she came in and just kicked me out anyway. So once again, Olivia has the upper hand. So every time I think I can win, man, she somehow finds it.
You've already started recording the podcast?
Yeah, we're 7 minutes in. And we were going to give you a hard time. We were talking about instructor school and how disciplined you are on time. And then here she is.
Right. Right. Well, I did say I was going to be late. I told that to you, A. B, you're lucky I'm even here. Okay.
Wow. There it is, folks. There's the reality of the day. So, Gage, I told you I wasn't sure. So this is welcome, listeners. We are 8 minutes in.
I don't know what your talking about right now, but I have two things I just want to say straight off the bat. One is, Gage, you don't have to tell us your age, okay? You don't have to. But your mustache is very mature.
I'm jealous of you, dude. You know what? Do you know why I'm jealous of your mustache?
Why is that?
Contrary to popular belief, like, have the whole beard now, obviously, but if you focus in on the mustache, it's very blonde, actually, and so it doesn't show up. Like when I tried to grow my mustache for when I was on the job, it literally didn't show up. So I dyed the damn thing black with mascara.
Oh shit!
One day while we were on duty, I tried to dye it black with mascara because the guys were like, "Oh, let's try to see what it looks like if it's actually cut like brown." And so they only had black, and I looked like fucking Mario or Luigi. Like it was awful. So you rock it well, man.
Oh, the beard's looking glorious, dude. So
I appreciate that. The beard's okay. The mustache, not. So
Well, the other side of the coin was your mustache is very mature, but your cheekies are like so cute.
no,
how
man.
old do you guys think I am?
Well, based on like your
I know you have
your looks or
military
your
experience.
like personality.
I know that you've got military experience, you got fire service experience. I know approximately the years for both of those. But I was guessing at instructor school, I was going to put you at about 29 to 32.
Don't answer. Looks, saw mustache, 23.
Ooh,
Maturity and commitment. I was also going to say probably, hovering in 30, maybe 28. But also, I think that your experience in life also leads to a maturity. So that's also, hard to
yeah.
say.
Well, I'm 27, but I've always felt like my time in the Army made me age in dog years. So I'm kind of
Okay.
up
So
there.
we're kind of correct in what we're assessing here.
Have you always been, because I kind of read you as this, man. Have you always, do you feel like you're kind of an old soul? Did
Yeah.
you feel that? Did you feel that way before your military career too, or do you feel like that's what kind of gave you that old soul?
I think it's a mix of both. The military absolutely made me way more mature.
Yeah.
Like prior to that in high school and whatnot, growing up, I was way more of like an idealist and like very eager, and now I'm more of a realist, and I kind of get more what's going on. Which is why I'm going the route I'm going with counseling and mental health and whatnot. So yeah, definitely, I would agree. I think I've had a lot more life experience than most. That's for sure.
Totally.
But nice job guessing. You guys pretty much nailed it right on the head. So,
well, I mean, we do hang out with cops. We have to put our detective hats on once in a while.
yeah, fair enough.
But you've got a lot going.
The other thing I just want to know, I'm sorry, these are the two things I just wanted to come in hot with my observation. One was the mustache age versus the man's age. And the second is that a surfboard behind you?
We have
an ironing board?
Yeah, I got two of them actually.
Yeah, so we were just talking before you came about our surroundings, how Gage is in a van, which is a super cool van. This is what I was noting about instructor school, and that I'm stuck in a 1960s time capsule, so I have this pink curtain. So for Olivia and the audience, we're all caught back up as to where we were. So
okay, my bad.
My bad. But what I found, so we roll in, there's this white van, cool, super cool font. He's got it on his shirt, so there's something happening here. He's clearly connected to this van, and I have questions about the van life. I have questions about your future, of what you're doing, how your past has kind of predicated your future, quite frankly, why you've made those choices you've made, and then how you plan to evolve going forward. Because those are kind of three important pieces for, I think, as we're talking with people. I'm at this conference here and just had a conversation again about lack of identity when people leave public safety. This woman's been in law enforcement for 40 years.
Right.
And she's retiring in 4 months. or 3 months now. And she was like, I've noticed that I've gotten very stressed. I've noticed that I've like started to hold my breath again. She's like, I'm using some of my mechanisms, my stress mechanisms are coming online that I thought I had kind of put to bed because I have dealt with the stress and trauma of life, job, work, everything else. And I looked at her, I said, it's because you're literally about to change your personal mission statement, your identity, and your purpose that you've known for 40 years. You're sensing that that's going to start changing and shifting under you very, very quickly.
Right.
I think, and so those are kind of the three things that I want to talk, that I want to kind of talk about. And so Olivia alluded to it. There, you are in the van, and there is a surfboard or an ironing board, which maybe you can use the ironing board for surfing. I don't know. Have never tried.
I really wish you had told me it's an ironing board. I like my shirts to be like creased. I mean, you could have just really taken us for a ride on that, and
Well,
I would have been
yeah.
like into it.
To
And
be
we,
honest with you, I don't think I've ever ironed any of my clothing in my entire life, so my brain did not go there.
I mean, I would actually be so. I live vicariously through the documentaries of people that live in their vans. Does that make sense? Does that make
Yes.
sense? I feel like a whole genre now of documentaries. And stuff.
I do the same thing, but Instagram accounts.
Yeah.
I'll like follow an Instagram account and be like, I'm there with you living in the van.
And at the top of the list that people bring with them, never once has been ironing board. Like they're not like that thing I could not live without.
Right. Yeah, I mean, this was home for just about 2 years, so I got real comfortable with it, and I did not have room for an ironing board. So you are correct.
was the van life between military and fire service, or tell us how van life evolved? Like, because I have a feeling there's actually a lot of people in the public safety world who have dreamt about that or thought of it. You know?
Yeah,
like,
for sure. If you want, I can just start from the top because it all kind of like links together and whatnot. Just
and we'll tease threads as we go and interrupt a little bit and have laughs, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure. But I'm a total open book, so any questions you guys have, just launch them. But yeah, I grew up in Massachusetts, and basically every male member of my family joined the military. It was just kind of like the rite of passage.
Sure.
So at 17, I joined the Army, and I didn't really have like a clear goal in mind. I just knew that I didn't want to go to college, and it was like either that, join the military, or like be a criminal or something. So
that's the story we hear so much, is like, okay, I need to get some discipline and structure, or and I also want to say, like, I appreciate that I don't want to go to college. And if you just pause for a second on that, can you tell? And I don't want to go too much on a tangent. I'm just curious what the sentiment is behind that, because I didn't go to college, and I have strong feelings about it in a good way.
Well, I didn't want to make my parents pay for it. I didn't want to like put them there. We grew up kind of modest financially and whatnot, and I didn't want to go into debt the rest of my life for a degree that I might not use. So I kind of foresight and didn't take that giant step forward. You know what I mean? Because I was thankfully at the time just surrounded by a lot of people who were older than me and had taken that step and like absolutely regretted it. And I just kind of was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. No.
Say no more. I completely understand and hear you. So just curious about that. So you're like, okay, life of crime, or, serve my country.
Yeah. Basically.
Okay, go ahead.
And it's kind of funny because my dad's a cop, so probably not the crime no matter what, but
listen, that would have been a great, juxtaposition, really throw your family.
Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of like the fire service. Like firefighters, some of them get into it, quite frankly, because their options were like pyromaniac or firefighter. Like, we love fire.
Yeah.
In some aspect. And so, right.
But I, from an early age, I was just always like playing with a camera. I was always just messing around. Disposable cameras were like huge because my parents would just buy them for me for like $5 and I just go to town. So I was just kind of always like being a photojournalist and going on adventures and having all these crazy, happenings would be probably the best way I could live my life. So I figured I'd like combine my two goals, Army and photography, and then I'd do that. So So I decided to enlist as a combat photographer. Our job school is a year long, so the minimum contract you could do for that is 6 years. So I went 6 years active duty.
Oh, 6 active, not 3 and 3.
Yep. I mean, in hindsight, I wouldn't change anything. I'm not the kind of guy who lives with regrets or whatever, but the goals that I had in mind as far as what combat photography would be were very different from how I pictured it going in. Because again, I was an idealist. We're all dumb kids. I just always wanted to be go, go, go. And I didn't realize that in the military, there is a lot of downtime. So that kind of bit me in the butt down the road. But my first duty station was in Germany. I was working at a training center. So like all these NATO countries would come in and we just have big war games. It was awesome. Like we're playing pretend war basically. Is what I grew up doing in the woods, but we actually had tanks and stuff blowing up, and it was like every boy's dream. I was having a blast.
You're like, wait, you can do this for real with real guns and real tanks?
Yeah, exactly. It was sick. And I was thankful enough that my leadership noticed how stoked I was to be there and do my job, because a lot of people, I don't want to talk negative about anybody, but it was kind of just like a screw off job for some people. It was just kind of like, whatever, I'll just show up, take a picture and go home. But for me, I was like living for that shit. I would be sleeping in ditches and covered in mud. And so my leadership saw that and they started putting me with like the toughest units to be with and hang with. So I started working with like a lot of special operations guys, and they basically let me do whatever I want. So I was like strapped into the side of a helicopter, taking pictures and video, and like whatever the guys were doing, I was right up in it. It was awesome. Like I had a blast. So from there, my next duty station, I was sent to Fort Bragg in North Carolina. I don't know what they call it now. They changed like all the base names, whatever. But I got sent there. I was attached to 1st Special Forces Command, and I would just get sent out on missions with those guys, but in like real life now. So my only 2 deployments, I went out with those guys, and I got a taste of everything. It was awesome. I went with mountain warfare teams. I was on boats doing a bunch of crazy, just fun stuff. Just stuff you don't really picture when you think of like what you can do as a combat photographer, or stuff you actually even know is going on with the military. Like I was fortunate enough to get out to go and do a lot of that stuff. But with anything cool in the military, there's also the penalty, like what it does to your body. And of course, kind of my mission now is like what it does to the mind, and kind of leading into a bigger conversation I'm sure we'll have after I finish my bio. But, I didn't know how to handle my mental health at all. It wasn't something that my leadership talked about. It wasn't anything that we had training for, none of that. No. And, it got pretty bad for me. I was in a real dark place after my 2nd deployment. And I had a year left of my contract, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do next. I wanted to keep doing what I was doing, but the Army was basically like, all right, you're going to be a drill sergeant or a recruiter. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. So basically it was like leave or stay in until you retire.
Right.
And that's 20 years in the military, at least.
Yeah. And that wasn't in alignment with your life plans and your life goals at that point.
No, not at all. Because like the conversation that I started having with myself that I think a lot of lifers kind of miss out on is I didn't want to be the guy who's going to college as like a 45-year-old or whatever, and is the old man in the class and is like barely making it into career fields where guys who are 22 are like senior to them and have more credentials. And, I didn't want to be that guy. And, nothing on those old guys in the back of the class, because they're kicking ass. They're doing good things for themselves. But I wanted to make headway and get further along in something that I was actually passionate about, instead of just being like, well, this is my life for 20 years. Cool. I'm here.
Yeah. And I think what's important about that is you took a conscious, like you were aware enough or proactive enough to actually start to plan your life out a little bit, or think about 5 and 10 years down the road. So to put a plan in place or have that vision in place, be like, okay, what am I going to do today to help get it in alignment with that vision? And that's hard for a lot of people to do. Like most people can barely think what they're going to have for dinner tonight, let alone what they're going to do 3, 5, 10 years down the road. And I think that's so critical to be that kind of co-creator in our life.
Right.
Yeah, I was noting that too, Gage, that as someone who is still so young and, even, in the past too, that you have this foresight, and that you are thinking ahead. And also something I want to get into later is this thing we commonly see in younger folks, especially when we teach recruits, the sort of ignoring of our training because they don't feel the impact yet. So they don't feel how important it is, and they, don't take it seriously. And it's the people who've been in it longer. But it just seems to me like you have this foresight about the mental health and what you want to do with your life at such a young age, which is impressive. But all right, we'll talk about that later. Let's finish, where you were going. So you're like, I don't want to be a lifer.
Yeah. So like when I was at that critical moment of like, well, what do I do next? I'm not staying here. I didn't really have a clear picture exactly what I wanted to do yet. Mental health as a career didn't come into the picture until a year or two down the road. But all I knew is the things that were helping me out mentally and physically, like actually being happy to be alive and whatnot, it was all being outdoors, being active, and seeing, the beauty of nature and what's around us. So I had a truck at the time. My dad helped me turn the bed of it. We just bought a mattress, put some drawers underneath it, and I was living out of that. And I said, screw it. So I got out, and then I drove to Utah, and I started going to college there on the GI Bill. And I started getting my bachelor's degree in outdoor recreation and parks management. Because, like, my goal at that time, I was like, I don't know what else I could do to be outdoors as much as a park ranger. So I guess I'll just set my sights on that and go for that.
That's who I'm hanging out with this week. They're all park rangers.
No, they're sick. They're some of the coolest people.
What full circle. So
yeah, no, especially like when I was able to chill with a bunch of them at my class with you guys, like that was awesome. Because they were like some of the coolest people I've met. Like they're just genuine, awesome people to talk to.
Totally. So your first van life experience was living out of a pickup truck van?
Yeah, so it was a Tacoma. I had
a truck van thing?
Yeah, it was a Tacoma. I had the extended bed and just queen size mattress in the back. It wasn't anything crazy.
I have a couple logistical questions real quick before we move on. Where do you poop?
So I would park at my college campus, use the gym. They had showers. And then to eat, you went to their mess hall or whatever you want to call it.
Right. Okay, great. And then what if it rained?
I would just go in the truck.
Yeah, so you had a topper on the back of it. So
yeah.
Oh, you had a topper for okay. Understood. Got it. Okay.
Absolutely roughing it like a maniac.
He just got his twin mattress in the back of his pickup truck, open air bed, so that way you get rained on. You get
no, not
well, if it's a nice night, you could take it off.
Really, totally.
Eric and I slept outside for a whole summer. It was great.
No, that's awesome.
Okay, great. I had to get that out because I was I'm really trying to put myself in your shoes. And okay, all right. So we got the bed, we got the GI Bill.
Mm-hmm. So I was doing that, and the things that I was learning to heal my mental health with. I got out of the Army. I had PTSD, anxiety, depression, just kind of like the classic disgruntled kind of action guy sequence of traumatic whatever. So I didn't really know how to heal myself. I just knew I had to do something because I couldn't live just hating my life and dreading my existence. So again, I just knew being outdoors helped. So I started getting into rock climbing, just hardcore. I didn't have anybody in Utah that I knew at the time, so I just bought a pair of climbing shoes and a crash pad, and I just started bouldering pretty much every day. If I wasn't at class, I was outside climbing or hiking or doing something like that. driving has never really bothered me. So like on a weekend, I would just drive 5 hours, 10 hours, go somewhere cool, just explore. Because I think it's hard to imagine for a lot of people who only live on the East Coast or really never leave the urban sprawl. But out west, you can drive for 5 hours and not see anyone. It's ridiculous. It's life
I
changing.
mean, it's amazing, right? Like, so it's mind boggling to me, having never lived on the East Coast, every time I go there, like how actually small the East Coast is.
Yeah.
Like how compressed everything is. For like, you're from Massachusetts, and so to go from like DC to Baltimore on up through Pennsylvania up to your neck of the woods actually isn't that far. Like,
No.
like from a time wise standpoint, and like, yeah, like coming from the Midwest and now living in the mountain states and the Western mountain states, like things out here are measured in 4 and 5 hours. Like that's
Yeah.
just the way, it's just the way it is, you know. And 4 to 5 hours is on the East Coast can be damn near from Washington to Boston if there weren't any traffic, you know. Like, it's insane. It's insane.
And like, I don't know if my brain is programmed differently or not, but being out in nature for like a weekend without seeing anybody else, hearing humanity, none of that is like healing to my brain. That's
You're
why.
talking to the right people. We
Yeah.
feel the exact same way. We're like, let me be. You know, what's interesting is I just recently heard a podcast that they interviewed a diagnosed sociopath.
Mm.
And I was like, do I have sociopathic tendencies? Because I'm like, want to be alone and don't understand people. But anyway, yeah, we feel the same way, that being alone and with nature like fills our cup. So I totally get what you're saying.
And just kind of gradually doing my thing. I've always been like somewhat of an innovator. So for the college, I started a climbing club. And the only people that I really seemed to attract were other veterans like me, who basically had the same background, deployments, all that stuff. And we just started coming together and having like hangouts and climbing and doing healthy stuff. And it just kind of all came together in my mind, like, this is what we should be doing. You know, I tried, so I'll back up a little bit. So I did that for a year. I was driving home to take the summer off back in Massachusetts with my family, and outside of Yellowstone National Park, I got just destroyed. Somebody hit me head on, just creamed my truck. I almost died. It was rough. So that's how the van is here now. I got a pretty gnarly concussion, and then I drove 40 hours in like 2 days and just got back home. Like, I don't know what happened, but so bought the van that summer, tricked it out, and then I drove back out for the start of the fall semester. And part of that semester is I had to get an internship working in leadership in like an outdoor position. The only thing that I could find that would take me that would work with my class schedule still is I started managing a rock climbing gym in Las Vegas. And that was an awesome opportunity. It didn't go exactly how I planned it, but I'm still thankful for it, and super stoked. And while I was there, I started getting more serious about the whole counseling thing. I was kind of skeptical because I was doing the classic veteran thing that a lot of people do. Like, they're civilians. What are they going to know?
Right.
All the kind of lies we tell ourselves. You know, there's some legitimacy to it. Like the cultural competence has to be a factor when you're a counselor. But my experience with counselors prior to that was not good. And it only got worse when I was in Vegas because I called and I was like, hey, I could use like a counseling session. I'm kind of going through it right now. And they're like, okay, the soonest we can fit you in is 3 months from now.
You're like, did you hear what I just said?
Yeah,
Like,
literally. So I waited, and
you waited the 90 days?
yeah, I waited. You know, I had to. I was like, well, what else am I going to do? So I waited. I showed up, and the secretary was like, yeah, so we forgot about your appointment. You'll have to come back in another month. And I was like, okay, thank you. Thanks a lot. Bye. And then I just left and I never went back. And I don't want to poison the name of VAs. I don't want to make people think like you shouldn't go, none of that, because there are a lot of good VAs that don't do that. But that was my experience. And I'm thankful for it now in hindsight, because that, coupled with what I was doing with my climbing club and seeing the growth that I was experiencing and a lot of my friends were getting out of it, kind of just drove home. Like, I don't think mental health has to be super drastic like a lot of people paint it. I think it can be as simple as learning how to do self-care and doing things that are good for you, like climbing, like having a community, and just avoiding. So I kind of came up with a lot of my own terminology for this stuff just to simplify it, because I'm a rockhead. And one of the terms that I came up with is a net positive activity. It's only positive. There's no negative downside to it. I think in like financial terms a little bit. And so like net positive activities, you're only going to gain from, nothing is going to be taken negatively out of it. So like that's your climbing, that's your time spent with your peers that are going to understand, and you're going to benefit from being with them, because we need community. Nobody's solitary. It's impossible. Yeah. And I think a lot of what veterans do are net negatives, and that's just go to a VFW and get drunk, or, you know, go to the bar and that's it. Yeah. So I just kind of pieced it all together. Like, what if we started trying to use these activities to help us mentally? That kind of sounds really simplified and whatnot. It took me a long time to get there, but so anyway, back to my story, I don't want to keep overstepping myself, but I was managing that rock climbing gym, and I was still in military mode. I was still very mission oriented, like the mission. And when I got hired there, they were going under. They were recently acquired by like a franchise, and the franchise wasn't doing so hot with a bunch of different random stuff. And they're like, yeah, we need you to help us save this place and turn it around. Like, we know you have leadership experience, like help us out. So I did what I thought I needed to do. I was like, mission, like, I saw a lot of the staff as a problem. So within the first month, like half the staff quit, like all that type of, you know what I mean? And I don't regret any of this, but like mentally I was still military mode, and like that's not conducive to civilian leadership, civilian careers. And I was kind of like a maniac at the time. Like, I was working every day, like 10 hours a day, just scrubbing walls and doing all the shit that I thought needed to get done. It's like, that's not healthy, man.
And quite frankly, staying that active and that busy, because that's how you've been trained and how you deal with all this shit in the background, right? Like, right. Not very good at just slowing down and taking that foot off the gas pedal. And then we start to break shit in the China shop as we're going along, you know? Like, that's
exactly. Like, I kind of turned into an asshole. And I kind of realized after a little while, like, this isn't great for me mentally, physically, like emotionally, you know, I was getting too invested. And like part of my driving factor is I wanted to introduce a lot more programs for military and first responders. Like, when I got hired, I was like, this is part of it. I'm doing this. Like, this is part of my terms of employment. And they were on board with it then. But I think because of how I was turning into like my mission, they're like, whoa, dude. And I got fired, which kind of devastated me at the time. But as I was driving home, because like pretty much right when I got fired, I had like 2 months of my college bachelor degree, and then I graduated. I did my whole bachelor's in a year and a half. I was like doing no less than like 15 credits a semester. Like, I don't know.
Dude.
Jeez. I'm a maniac with some of this shit.
The story continues.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just gonna say, there's high chance that you're like the next like Jeff Bezos or something. Like, if you stay that driven for the rest of your life, like, or maybe the story takes a turn here, but I have a feeling that you're going to continue to stay driven based on your new findings and your new passions. I'm just saying. So,
well, I'll give you this example. We invited him to dinner with the team, which is like rare. We never do that. And he said, I've got homework. So I think he's still
doing it.
To be honest, I thought you guys were thinking I was still homeless because you knew I was sleeping in the van.
I know. Oh my God, Leslie. She was just like, we can't allow this. He has
Leslie,
to come home and get a hot meal.
Leslie was actually quite concerned about you
Yeah, no,
as
I
the,
can kind of feel
as the good Jewish mother that she is. You know,
yeah, she's the best. No, I kind of felt that. I thought she was thinking I was like homeless, and I was like, no, I'm just sleeping here. It's not that big.
I'm
You're like, this is
choosing.
actually a choice. I'm
Yeah,
making a choice here.
In fact,
this
my
for hotel, like
yeah,
Yeah.
in fact, my rig costs more than most people's homes.
yeah,
So
pretty much. But so yeah, I got fired like a month or two later. I um graduated my bachelor's, and I was like, well, I don't know what to do exactly yet. So I started driving home back to Massachusetts because when I was home summer break that last time, I took the firefighter application test. And basically, like on my way home, they called me and they're like, "Yeah, we want to start getting you into the hiring process." So that happened.
So how did you decide to put that application in? Because that actually seems like a turn in the story. Like
Oh
that,
yeah,
like you're going like you're starting to put together the mental health and wellness pieces and starting to figure out like you can build community around those pieces. Like so, one would assume like, oh, that's the path forward.
He's like, let's dive into some more trauma. I
But then
think that'd be great.
you're like, I'm home. I'm just gonna toss my fire application in through the mailbox.
I mean, it is kind of, now that I'm saying it all out loud, I guess it is kind of crazy the sequence of events that went down. I don't know. So my dad, well, my brother's an active firefighter in the department I'm at.
Okay.
He was here like, I want to say like 10 years around there. So he's really liked it. He does that and he has a side job and like he's making it all happen. Like I'm stoked for him. Super busy, super successful. But my dad, before he was a cop, he kind of hates to admit this, but he took the firefighter application test, got hired and whatever. And then,
I thought you were going to say he didn't get hired, so he
oh,
became a cop. That would have been like a brilliant.
It's even better than so. My department, the first part of our hiring is like once you get through the tests and all that and the academy, they stick you in a dispatch office and you talk on the radio, and you send trucks out. And it's like it's not bad, but it's not being on the engine putting out fires or whatever. But
No, so your first assignment on the department is is the alarm room. Like you're pushing out to the units.
Yeah, and you do that. You do that for as long as it takes for them to hire the next batch of recruits. So some people they're up there 3 years, some people they're up there 2 months, not even.
Wow!
All super random drop of the hat. And my dad is very driven like me. He's always like, go, go, go. I'm never sitting still, never, twiddling with my thumbs. And he got hired, and within like 6 months, he cracked because the police department was like, hey, you're high speed. We'll hire you right now. And he's like, all right, screw it. I'm out. See ya. And
we'll take you off the desk and put you on the street.
Yeah, no. And basically, he's regretted that decision ever since. And he's like, you should be a firefighter. I should have stayed on. Like, don't make the same mistakes I did because like he knows that I'm like more drawn to that than. But
they caught him in that moment of weakness. Like, that very short term decision. Like, yeah, I want to be on the streets. You got me.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
So my dad was kind of always just like the voice in my ear, like, if you don't have any other plans, you don't have another direction, like the fire department's the best job in the world. We work 2 days on, 5 off, like good pay, all the benefits, like just do that. You can stay at home with us until you figure it out. So I did the application, whatever. And then as I was driving home, I got the email like, hey, next step, come on up. And so somewhere along that 40-hour drive back home, I also had like the eureka moment of like, all the stuff you do has real world therapeutic benefits to it.
Yep.
And, we have a military like mental health crisis on our hands. I'll start talking about those statistics more in a bit, but like the problem isn't going away. It's only getting worse, if anything. And like more people need to do more about it. So who better to do stuff than us? Like no one's coming and stuff to us. It's got to come from within. So like, yeah, just somewhere along the way, I had the idea of what was Stoke basically. So I was like, I guess, next step is I have to go back to college and continue for psychology and become a counselor.
How you're doing that?
I mean, this is like this epic drive. Like, I'm almost going to die. Then I don't die. And then I decide like I'm going to, have this whole life. I'm going to go back to school. I mean, this is like, you could write a movie about like the 40-hour journey,
Oh, thank you for saying that.
I'll pitch the screenplay to someone.
Yeah, fair enough. But yeah, so I got hired. Well, I went home. I took the first hiring process steps, did the physical or whatever, and then I had 6 months to kill. So I used a GI Bill and I went and became a scuba instructor. And
well, that's great for the air. I mean, come on, like
I didn't have the interviews yet with the chief or any of that. So I had to buy a suit and tie at a Salvation Army down the street from my dive center. And then I'm on the boat with my phone on Zoom, rocking back and forth.
Oh my God.
Hi, and then below me I have my shorts on, just waiting to dive. I'm like, yes sir, no sir.
So you did your Chiefs interview in full interview mode or newscaster mode, suit and tie on top, swimsuit on the bottom, scuba tanks damn near strapped underneath your suit coat, and you just bail off the boat as soon as you hang up.
Yeah, literally. I'm on the dive boat, which
right.
I wish someone else had been filming that, so we could have just seen.
Most guys, most people that they are studying and are stressed after that Chiefs interview and that firefighter interview. And here's Gage rocking back and forth on a boat, getting ready to dive. Either that made you interview so much better because you were just whatever, fuck it, I don't care because I'm on this boat and this is my life. Or it made you interview fuck it, I don't care because I don't know. I mean, how did it make you stronger? Did it make you just not even care? How did that?
I have a theory, if I can say, Gage, and then you can tell me if I'm on the right track. Okay. I think that we talk about, by the way, the interview situation as one of those research studies of DHEA, right? And what I'm doing with the stress. So you have, and this also goes into flow and flow hacks, is that if you want to get in flow in this direction, practice it in this direction, because then it'll automatically happen, right? So you have a pursuit that you're doing. You're getting your scuba, you're on the boat, your mind's doing that. You have purpose. And so since you already have this purpose, your self-worth is up. You're actually already in challenge mode when you're having that phone call because you're about to dive. You're about to go into a challenge stress response. And so you're operating neurologically in the challenge response so that interview just jumps on for the ride. When other folks who have all their eggs in the basket of getting on the fire department are in the threat response challenge because they have nothing else going on to help them get them into the flow state. And so, of course, they're nervous as hell. But you were already in the flow cycle because of what you were about to do. So this other stressful experience just came on to the challenge response with you. So that's my theory.
I guess I never really thought about it that way. I'm just glad it makes
sense. That's because you hadn't met me yet. So that's why.
Fair enough.
It's a fascinating way to do Chiefs interview. Sorry, man, to derail you on that, but that was just
we couldn't just breeze over it. Right. Go ahead.
Then I got hired and I did my year in dispatch basically, and now I'm on the engine. I have been for the past 3 months, so I'm pretty stoked on that. Life is good. But the whole time I've just been chipping away at getting my degrees going. Going for my master's in military clinical counseling at William and Mary online, and then I'm getting my PhD at Walden University online.
Simultaneously?
Yeah. It's all pretty manageable.
Okay. No biggie. Right. Yeah, casual.
I don't know. I don't think college is impossible. I think a lot of people try to make it out to be this insurmountable object or obstacle, and it's not. It's just tedious. That's all it is. And in the military, when I'm literally mopping the sidewalk in the rain, I've learned what tedious means. I can handle it. So
you just gotta grind your way through it. At the end of the day,
that's it.
Well, but this is also kind of reminds me of what I try to talk about with the yoga mat, right? you know what tedious is. You have been working in the rain, and you get that. So you can apply whatever tools that you learned from that, you can now apply to real life scenario. And your window of tolerance for the tediousness of school is a lot bigger than mine was, like it's because I didn't have the training to handle it. So what I try to tell people about the yoga mat is sort of that same thing. Like, you're annoyed with me. Well, you're going to have a boss one day, So now is the time on the yoga mat to practice all these tools so that you can tolerate it, out in the real world. So
Yeah.
I think that you had, unbeknownst to you, you were getting all the training you needed to be successful.
Yeah, fair enough.
So I'm curious why, because I had this decision point at one point in my life too, man. Because I really was thinking about going back and becoming a licensed clinician at one point. Because I was on my peer support team on my agency, and this was before Olivia and I had met, and was sitting in the clinician's office and whatnot. And quite frankly, at that point, lying to my therapist before I decided to get serious about it a little bit later on. And I actually ended up making the conscious decision not to become a clinician because I realized I could still have conversations and do what I wanted to do without that piece of paper. So I'm curious why, what drove you to choose the other route? Just because it's not that one's right or wrong, they're just two different routes. And so I'm just curious, what, knowing that you could have continued to do the rock climbing clubs and basically peer support through adventures, what kind of was that thought process on getting that clinical degree?
Or what's your intention now with it? Now that you have Stoke, now, what's the plan?
And maybe that is part of your foresight and forward-looking vision too. So
yeah. So down the road, I want to loop, when I'm able to start my private practice, I plan on making that part of Stoke. But so my perception of how psychology and mental health works is it's a lot of different pieces of the puzzle that make us work. It's not just because your mental health isn't just because you're depressed. It's probably you have bad nutrition, you don't have good lifestyle choices, you don't have a solid community like XYZ, you have all these other factors that contribute.
Right.
And so Stoke is the answer to a lot of those problems. And when I'm credentialed, I plan on having treatment centers that guys can come into and get pretty much every single piece of the puzzle at least talked about. Because a lot of people, I think one of the problems with the perception of mental health is people isolate little things about it. And they think I'll just go to counseling and that'll get me out of depression. No, if you go to counseling and you don't change the fact that you have poor nutrition, you don't exercise, you have no friends, you have, your hobbies are drinking, it's not going to work.
You're not sleeping. Your sleep hygiene is shit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we need to have, I don't want to say training, but because when I think training, I think of we're going to go do hose drills or whatever, but we do need training. We need to
call it training because we have to look at it that way. We have to look at as, in my point of view, important, as critical as hose drills, as given as many resources as hose drill. The reason we don't call it training, and again, this is not commenting on what you were just saying with the battle with that word training, but in my point of view, from what I've seen so far, the softness around mental health and wellness has made it totally undesirable to be part of.
Yeah.
So that's why I put so much structure around YFFR, because it has to have that same weight to it. And so I think training is absolutely the word that needs to be used. And that's just my opinion. So when you say it, I'm yes, I'm on track with you.
Oh yeah, I couldn't agree even more anymore. Honestly, I think you guys could be even more, I don't want to say mean, but strict.
Dude, oh my God, Gage. We used to be.
Yeah.
We did. We're the kinder gentler YFFR.
Let me tell you that some people, people like you, knew exactly why we were doing it, jumped all in, blah, 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 blah. We are a rare breed, us, who really understand the value of discipline and challenge. We're a rare breed. And there were quite a few people who couldn't hang. And in order to kind of be able to move forward with the least amount of resistance and actually do our job, we had to make a kinder, gentler YFFR. And let me even tell you that first academy class that we did, this has happened a few times, even a very recent instructor school, not yours, very recent one. People lost their fucking minds because I asked them to play the role of a recruit. They lost their fucking minds. And I was like, guys, you are taking the mirror of self-awareness that I'm giving you, and you are turning it towards me and pointing a finger at me because you don't want to point a finger at yourself. You don't want to look at yourself. That is so prevalent. And so you are right, Gage. We could be even more than what we are. And part of it is a conscious choice of just like, hey, we got a job to do. I can't deal with people's shit, And also, like, I don't want to say I've given up. It's not that, but it's like, I don't want to fight this fight anymore. I want people to have the tools, but I can't keep fighting the disciplinary aspect of it.
Right.
Just to get, and then these people aren't getting the tools that I know they need. So anyway, 100%.
Yeah. So we're kind of starting to tease into Stoke, even deeper into Stoke Therapy a little bit, which is Gage's company. So for those who are listening in, Stoke Therapy is Gage's company. You started this, right? This is,
I guess I give the focused view of what it is right now, and then get into what I plan in the future.
Yeah, totally. But this is your baby. Like this is your brainchild from the 40-hour drives back and forth across the country.
Yeah,
right.
Basically.
Yeah. Okay. So Stoke Therapy. What is it today? Where is it going?
So as it sits right now, we are a nonprofit organization. We do three main things. Number one, we do peer support, one-on-one sessions. And I use the term like life coaching. It's kind of like you are thinking about mental health and getting serious about it and counseling, but you don't want to take the dive into showing up at like a clinic or something. You can reach out to me and I'll talk to you like, hey man, this is why you should think about it. These are your options. I'll give you some resources and like, I'll walk you there. So that way you're not totally like isolated and feeling like this is very challenging and uncomfortable to do on my own. Like I'll help you through that.
Yeah. And I think it's actually kind of an interesting business model too, personally, because we hear a lot of times that people don't want to go to peer support their own agencies because they don't want to talk to Sally or Joe, who's going to be riding the truck with them next week, unloading their shit. And then Sally or Joe are going to be hopping on the truck. Like sometimes that peer support is great, but it's too close. And so to have somebody like you where like you're not part of their agencies, you may not even be part of their network, but you have the peer support background, that kind of stuff. You're kind of that really truly good bridge.
That would happen to me actually as a yoga instructor. Is there were a couple people who, unloaded their stuff on me because I was in enough to kind of understand, but not part of the agency officially. Yeah. So I think you're absolutely right that they would skip that too close thing and go to the option that was safer for them. So I think that's a great model.
Yeah. So
that's part of it.
What we're trying to do is just like dismantle all the barriers that are keeping people from like working on themselves. Mm-hmm. And I'll get back to my thought process on that later. But the second thing we do is we organize weekly meetups. So that way you can have a sense of community with people that you're going to see every week if we get consistent with it. And we do healthy activities. It's not going to the bar and drinking or kind of like wallowing in it. We go rock climbing, we go fishing, we go surfing, stuff that is a net gain. There's going to be no negative side to it. And the third thing that we do is we're starting to plan outings. So this summer in July, it's July 12th to the 15th in Rumney, New Hampshire. If anybody listening is local to New England, we have a mini climbing festival that I'm planning. So
Stoke Fest, like Stoke Fest. Like, don't bury the name of it. It's Stoke Fest.
I'm sorry, it's called Stoke Fest?
Yeah.
This is amazing.
You guys are both invited if you want to come out.
Oh my God, I would love it. Are you thinking about merch? I'll run the merch table for you.
Absolutely. Anything you guys want to do. You can get in on.
Yeah, you guys, I'm a little nervous about rock climbing. I've never done it, so I have a hard time climbing stairs. So I'll just run the merch table.
Yeah, sure.
I joke. I would love to learn how to rock climb.
No, absolutely. So Rumney is a beautiful place. The campground is right on the river. It's all tent camping. It's just peaceful, middle of nowhere, New Hampshire. There's nothing around except for the rock climbing. So it will be outdoor rock climbing, yoga, which too bad I don't know anybody who's involved with yoga.
That's a real blind spot you've got, Gage. You need to get in with the yoga community.
Why, does it have benefits for your mental health or something?
No, we just stretch our hamstrings. That's pretty much it. So
just stretch matcha.
Yeah.
Matcha. I don't even drink coffee, so I don't know what it's called.
Pumpkin spice lattes, is that what you're referring to?
There you go. That's it.
As a white lady, we have, I don't think you guys know this, only the white lady clubs know this, that we're tested on pumpkin spice lattes, what ingredients are in them. That's a joke. I'm joking about being a white lady.
I believe in yoga. That just goes hand in hand.
If someone's listening to this, you should have seen both their faces. Just like Gage was so sweet, like looking at me like, oh, interesting.
So rock climbing, hiking, fly fishing, just yoga, a lot of outdoor stuff. And we're starting to reach out to a lot more local vendors and organizations so they can run their own little clinics and little micro events and whatnot. So we're going to have activities the entire time. And really my thought process with that is getting everybody together in nature in a community setting and then shotgun blast a whole bunch of healthy things at people. So that way, if they only latch onto one thing, it's going to be something that they can use to get healthy and active and happy. So that is the main thing.
Is this open? So I'm with Stoke, and I'm sorry if I missed this. Is it specific for military and public safety, or is it for people?
It's military and first responders right now.
Okay.
Included within that umbrella is dispatchers, medical personnel at the hospital.
Of course, yeah.
Something like that.
Okay.
Down the road.
Broad umbrella.
Yeah. Down the road. Oh, and I'm thinking about expanding that to like clinicians and mental health workers too, because they absolutely need it. But down the road, I'm thinking about starting programs on the side for like Gold Star families and people like that. Because the way I figure is like the mental health epidemic in America is so large of a problem that I want to try and start with one population I know I can help right now. So that's
absolutely like you have to, if you go too broad, it's going to just definitely be watered down. Like, definitely niche it up first. Yeah.
And the other part that I really like about this too, man, is like you get somebody, like I see a lot of testimonials and a lot of stuff on your website from like paddleboarding and surfing and water sports, right? Is it so you get somebody in those elements and you build that bond and you build that rapport and you build that trust. And I'm sure that you just have this natural knack then to engage the conversation. And before they know it, you're coaching them in these sports. Oh, and by the way, we're also diffusing some of the stuff that they're dealing with in their life that they don't even realize that they're kind of going through peer support or talk therapy because focused on the mission at hand, which is the active action adventure sport that you're kind of coaching them through. I mean, is that something that you kind of see with the people you work with?
Absolutely. And that's kind of where it all comes full circle into becoming like a legitimate licensed clinician and whatnot, is because I think one of the gaps, and this is what I'm doing my PhD thesis on and whatnot, is one of the huge gaps on mental health is like these action adventure sports, if applied correctly, absolutely have therapeutic benefits and they are therapeutic tools. Because what I love about yoga, especially how you guys do it, is like these activities are a brute force tool to get out of your ego, get out of your comfort zone, and be present. Because when you're paddleboarding, you got to focus on your balance, paddling, basically not falling over, the water, like talking to me. You can't be caught up in your head, caught up in your bullshit.
There's too many inputs. There's too many inputs to deal with.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think, especially with populations that have as serious of a mental health problem as veterans and first responders, like, you need to have that brute force application applied to you to get out of it.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Like the populations that we belong to have so many reasons why we don't let ourselves do that. And I don't want to say other populations don't have that, but I just hear it all the fucking time. Sorry if I can't swear, but
you can swear.
Oh, yeah. I mean, pull out.
No,
we look offended. Like,
I hear it all the fucking time. The same type of stuff that I used to say before I got into therapy and whatnot. I was like, my counselor is a civilian. They're not going to know what I'm going through. How is this going to, all that type of shit, the interference that we make in ourselves, in our minds. These brute force techniques are what's going to help us get around that. So that's why, like, I absolutely applaud everything you guys do. And one of my buddies just briefly said, like, hey, I think there's like a company that does yoga specifically for first responders. I didn't even really read into what you guys do. I didn't research. I didn't do none of that. I just signed up when I saw an open class, and that was it. Like, I was like, I'll give it a shot. Cool.
Fingers crossed. Good.
Yeah,
the best.
Fingers crossed. This isn't stupid.
I'm sure you guys could tell I'm not a yogi. Well, I wasn't at the time. Like, I've done my
Gage,
own.
You are. I think I even said that at instructor school. You are a yogi.
Yeah,
I don't know. I've been doing my bastardized version of yoga for a while and mobility and whatnot, but like the discipline and the breathing and everything that you guys brought to the table is what I was missing. So
yeah, I want to say, when you talk about this brute force activity, it's funny you said that, because I taught at the fire department this morning, and that was the concept of the class, was that acute stress is one of the tools to break out of cumulative stress. Like, that is one of the tools research backed that you can do. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like, I imagine it like punching the cumulative stress out of its patterning, right? So, and there was another guy at the fire department today who told me that he was told yoga was good, so he popped in a DVD and doing whatever, but said the same thing you did when he started doing YFFR, and said, oh my God, the specificity, the breath work, now it's all making sense, right? So we did a class that was kind of tough today. Like, we had them doing tons of squats, tons of, ladder push-ups, like all this sort of stuff, to get them to the tremoring point, to get to that acute stressor. Because like you said, when I've got them tremoring and saying shoulders down, 3-part breath, their mind is nowhere else but right there. Yeah. And that's what is needed to get the nervous system to go. I imagine it like this like little buzz, right? Of this, that's your cumulative stress, just always there, right? And then something goes pop and like gets it out of that buzz state, so that you can be like, wait, where am I? Let me get my shit back in order. So that's exactly, and then that's another flow hack. So basically that's like getting to the flow state, whereas cumulative stress or burnout, you're not in, it's the opposite of flow. So a flow hack is anything that has a risk to it. So it could be a physical risk like rock climbing or whatever, but also a mental or emotional risk can also be a flow hack as well. And I think that what I'm hearing is that what your program does is touch on all of those quote unquote risks, that pop someone out of their cumulative stress and into the zone.
Yeah. Because I don't want to say I'm tricking people into something, but I don't really know how else to paint it, because I essentially want to deliver therapy to people without them realizing like, hey, this is therapy right now.
You're giving them what they want and also what they need. So you're drawing them in with what they want and then giving them what they need. I wouldn't say it's tricking as much as a gateway.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, this is something that too, like as you go through with your vision, like it's in your name. It's Stoke Therapy, like it's there.
Right.
And we've gotten pushed back on our name. They're like, well, if you change your name to something different than yoga for first responders, people would probably like be lined up out the door based on what you can do for them. But the fact that you have the word yoga in the name keeps people literally running for the hills and saying yoga is not for me, regardless of all the benefits. It's not for me because of that 4-letter word. And what I tell people when we have this conversation is, I really appreciate that. We've been approached by that many, many a times, but there's this issue of not tricking people, not deceiving people. And so if we called it something else, like super awesome tactical mobility training for public safety, and then they showed up and it's a yoga class, then they're going to be like, well, fuck, I didn't sign up for a yoga class. I signed up for that. And so then we either have to fight the fight on the front end, where we're going to be teaching you yoga, but here are the benefits, or here are the benefits. It's not yoga. It's this other super cool thing. And then, but by the way, it's actually yoga, And so you're not deceiving people. It's in your name. Like all you have to do is literally your website is Stoke Therapy. You just
yeah. It's not like you're saying like, hey, this is like, hookers and blow fest. And then they come here, they're like, no, it's not. It's therapy. It's like, what the hell?
Yeah.
But and also I want to change the stigma of yoga. So maybe that is, I don't know, a lifelong battle if it ever changes. But no, sorry, this is yoga.
Yep.
Don't if I change it to something else, then yoga will continue to be looked at as the stretching, trendy, whatever. I'm trying to say, I don't know what they need to change their name. The local yoga studio that's just being bullshit, you change your name. Right. I'm not going to change my name because this is yoga.
I think this is going to help kind of change the culture overall, is if we have more people like you guys who are willing to just take that stand and be like, I'm not going to change it to be more comfortable for you. Like, this is what it is. It'll help, but only if you come to it yourself. Like,
right.
Well, and it's honestly,
and it also gets the people that are ready.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of that first barrier of defense too. Like if you're not willing to come to listen to us because the word or the name has yoga in it, quite frankly, you're not ready for the personal exploration and that next leveling up of yourself. Like you got so much work to do.
You would not be able to handle me call you a recruit.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, honestly, like that's the reality of it, man. And so like it's like almost that first filter. If your ego is so big that you're so identified with the fact that I can't touch my toes or whatever it is,
right,
then you're not, quite frankly, you've got to do some looking inward first to figure out like, why am I so offended
right.
by the word yoga, or why am I so offended by the concept of therapy? Like what's going on with inside of me?
Right. And ultimately the only real reason why I'm going for my PhD is because I think once I have the ability to have that title, just going to lend more credibility to what I'm doing, because surfing and rock climbing and all the other things I do are being studied as we speak for the therapeutic benefits of it. But the response I get from most of the people I talk to is like, oh, cool, you just go surfing. It's the very dismissive attitude that I'm sure you guys are incredibly used to.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I am sick of that. So I hate to put too much weight on what a title can do for you, but with a lot of people, unfortunately, that is what does it.
Whether you like it or not. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. You sometimes you have to, if you can't fight them, join them, sort of a thing. Like, but I absolutely agree. Like, I hear podcasts and this or that, and like the one I mentioned earlier about the sociopath. She's a diagnosed sociopath, but she has her doctorate, in psychology, studying sociopathy. So, but that's what makes her cool, right? If it was just like, hey, I'm a sociopath, let me tell you about my life. But the fact that she's a PhD in it, that's what, like you said, lends this layer of credibility that all of a sudden people could just like, they don't have to Google you too hard. They're like, oh, great, that university said he was cool, so we can, I can continue forward. It's kind of like Yoga Alliance. So Yoga Alliance International is this nonprofit organization that creates standards to be a certified yoga instructor, blah, blah, blah. But it is not regulated. It's not a governing body officially. but it's the only thing we've got. So a lot of gyms or a lot of whatever will ask, are you a, Yoga Alliance certified instructor? And when people say yes, you're like, great, because we know you've hit the standards that they've set. At least it's some sort of auditioning process, but there are tons and tons of great yoga teachers who aren't officially certified through Yoga Alliance. And there's tons of 200-hour Yoga Alliance certified trainings that are trash, but it gives you something for people who don't know the difference.
Right.
So that's why I do support it in that way, that it does, help people do a little bit of vetting. So yeah, I totally see what you're saying. And I think that's the way to go so you can make your mission successful.
And I think I have to add the counseling portion of what I'm doing too, because the mental health crisis, again, going to what we hear just all the time, like they're not going to know what I've been through. I think that me getting that credential and becoming a therapist is going to get rid of that for a lot of people, because I have the Army experience and the firefighter experience. So what are you going to say, dude? You're just making excuses.
And you're like, and I've got the mustache. I mean, I have got everything. I've got the trifecta, okay, to make you trust me.
Yeah, right. I mean, you're literally taking down the barriers for people. Like you're laying them bare. To the point where it is, what excuse are you going to make next?
Yep.
Like, what more we've had all of these conversations. They didn't have their public safety experience. They didn't have military experience. They don't have their clinical degree. They haven't done this. They don't serve. They don't do action, like whatever. And you're like, okay, fine. I'll check all of these boxes. Yep. And I'll stand there as this mission of one. And I'm sure there are others like you out there, and I hope you find them. I really, really do. But you're standing there as this mission of one, and you're like, bring it. And are you optimistic that people will? Or because of your conversations and knowing how people work, is there a part of you who's like, and yet they still won't come? Because I mean, that's a hard thing to battle with. And
well, because sometimes there is no rhyme or reason, and we face this too. It's like, we have given you everything, taken away every single excuse, and then it's just ghosting, or it's a whatever. I mean, that's human nature when we don't want to face ourselves.
Yeah. I think it's just a matter of time overall. It's going to take time for me to get to the point where I can have a private practice. I'm still 3 years out, like Massachusetts regulation. I have a year left of my coursework, and then I have to have 2 years of supervised practice after that before I can have my own private. So that's going to take time. And then once that happens, it's going to take time to build up my reputation. But on the counseling side of things, like, I've already been told by multiple people I've talked to as like a peer support guy, or just like, shooting the shit, like, you're going to have people lined up outside the door, around the corner, like down the block, because nobody has your background doing this yet. So as a counselor, I'm not super worried about it. What does frustrate me is people, again, just being very dismissive towards the alternative activities that I'm like giving people, the surfing, the climbing, because when you think surfing is same as yoga, is same comparison. What do you think of surfing? Just like rattle off the top of your head.
Oh, just like dumb dudes.
Yeah. It's probably just a lot of weed on the beach, whatever. Have someone on their nose, like.
And that would be the misconception, right? The Santa Cruz millionaires, we call them.
Well, exactly. I am from Santa Cruz, California, the surfing capital of the world. So I do know, well, first of all, there is a lot that fit that stereotype there, but also I do know the mindfulness that goes into surfing. And go ahead.
And I was going to say, and that's exactly it. We're the wrong audience to think you have the misconceptions for you. We're playing along for sure, because we're both fully in your camp of your alternative sports. Like I can, like, we study like the Laird Hamiltons and listen to the podcast of like how deep it goes mentally, psychologically, emotionally losing yourself into one where you're literally touching the ocean and fade away into the ocean. Like that is literally the definition
One
of
with it,
the
yeah.
flow state. To Olivia's point, and in fact, flow state happened because of action adventure
I was
sport.
gonna say, like, Steve Cutler was
Yeah,
surfing when he like
right.
discovered flow. Not
Exactly. So,
discovered flow, someone else discovered it for himself.
Right.
so unfortunately, we're the nerds that are like, "Fuck yeah, bro, we're in."
I mean that stigma around surfing and all the other activities, like that's what we're hit with, same as you guys with yoga.
Yep.
In reality, it's like from just being in the water, you're getting the therapeutic benefit, the cold water immersion, the salt water, all of that benefit hitting you. You're in sunlight, so you're getting, the sun rays, that benefit. You're in nature. You're doing breath work every time you get in and out of the water. You're doing a complete full body exercise, just on your board, jumping on, standing up, all of that. Like in so many different ways, there are so many therapeutic benefits that you get out of it without even realizing it that you can't get any other way. No therapist,
Yep.
unless they're out there on the waves with you, which is what I plan on doing. No other therapist can really do that for you. You're not going to get all those
So cool.
benefits in one package. Because ultimately, what I
Man,
want to do is give
you
people the
sold
big
me.
for their buck. I
Yeah.
want them to get as much out of a session as possible. And the flip side of that coin is all of these activities, once they can get their own equipment, or down the road, once I get funding, if I can give it to them, they can do this on their own. They don't need anyone else. They can go paddle out, surf by themselves. They can go to a climbing gym or go buy a boulder pad and go boulder somewhere. They can do it all by themselves.
Yeah, you're
That's
teaching. So you're teaching
That's
that.
exactly our goal too, is to they don't need us. Yeah.
right.
Yeah, so you're teaching that efficacy and the autonomy. I mean, two critical pieces to live a thriving life.
And I think that's one of the huge things that's missing about the mental health conversation at large, because you can't go to your therapist every single time you're feeling down in the dumps. You can't, at most, what are you going to do? See your therapist like once a week, unless you're at like some kind of an intensive outpatient type clinic. Like, not that that's bad, but you have to have more that's going to help you out mentally that you can do on your own when no one else is around.
Well, that's our argument too about all those relaxation coping mechanisms and why we don't want to be associated with it, is they're all outside yourself. You cannot depend on anything or anyone outside of yourself. This is the only thing you got.
Right.
So you're absolutely right that there's this empowerment piece to the therapy scene that I don't think is there, or like the proper tool. And with surfing again, there are so many yoga surfing like camps and intensives that are always together and I actually did attend a workshop that was yoga like for surfers. Basically, I've never been surfing, but I love the mechanics and the breath work and the everything they did that you could then translate when you go out there. And I had really wanted to do a surfing yoga getaway camp thing in Costa Rica when I was in like my mid-20s, and my mom convinced me to go home instead, and never got to Costa Rica. So it's something I still crave to do, and you're getting me more into it.
Well, whenever we have a surf retreat, you guys are invited. So come on down. Even if you make
I'll do
weekly sessions, if you're in Boston or something.
Yeah,
we'll do the yoga, you do the surfing.
Yeah, and I'm also super excited about like the rock climbing too, because obviously, so you're a videographer, photographer. Like that was your first creative passion,
Right?
Like that was photography, and so being one of these guys that watches all these documentaries and whatnot, like in the instructor school, we used to have a class called Flow. They was a video series done by Stephen Kotler before one of his books. They have all of these great action adventure sport athletes that talk about their moments on the waves or on the mountain or whatever it is. But they have Jimmy Chin on there. And they have, right? He's a badass dude. Like but they have him on there as like photographer, like as his title, which that is his title. Like, to be fair, that is his title. He does a lot of the cinematography work for these extreme action sports folks. But this dude is probably also, by the way, one of the most accomplished mountaineers, rock climbers, everything else. He just happens to be the one carrying carrying the camera along with him. So on this thing, I always felt like he got screwed because it's just like photographer. It's like, bro, like, come on, man. Like, he's doing all these climbs and everything else with these guys. And when you start to actually study into him, he's actually leading most of them, quite frankly.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That kind of ties nicely into the other benefit that I think a lot of these people get out of it, because I don't see this so much with first responders, since most of us are still technically considered civilians. But like when I got out of the Army, one of the other big cultural things that I just had drilled into me is like, civilians are worthless. Don't talk to, civilians are stupid, all that type of shit. It's just negative nonsense. And that leads to, I think, military service members just overwhelmingly getting isolated. And I think that does cross over into first responders somewhat. But when you come with us to the climbing gym, you're surrounded by civilians. These are all just normal people, believe it or not. Same thing with surfing. And like, some of the people I've met at the climbing gym or surfing are like the coolest people I've met. They're not worthless pieces of shit. You don't have to isolate. You don't have to just be solo, like, one man army. Like, you can socialize with these people and make friends. It's possible. And that's one of the biggest takeaways that I get from a lot of people, on top of, feeling better and happy they went. Like, they're just like astonished. Like, I've actually started talking to people, and it's crazy. Like, yeah, man, like, you got to get out there. Like,
But it's a shared interest outside of the job, because that's how public safety isolates personally. Is it's like, we're not obviously trained that civilians are the assholes or whatever, but we just become so entrenched inside of that circle that our social club ends up becoming the guys that we work with. So they become the guys we go play golf with. So those are the guys we go drink with, and those are the guys that we end up in our wedding and whatever. So like that wall, it kind of gets built invisibly a little bit. But now all of a sudden there's this shared, common, hard thing outside of work that we can talk about.
Yep.
It's almost, the wall becomes, for lack of better terms, a shared enemy that we can now bond over that's in front of us. And so to that point, a rock climbing gym in Albuquerque, a good friend of ours, his name's Jose, he teaches mindfulness practices to the fire department, to tier 1 athletes, high level corporations and whatnot. But he's met several Air Force PJs, because there's an Air Force base in Albuquerque, and the PJs hang out together, but they go climbing at the gym. And so now he's become good friends with the PJs that are climbing at the gym, and they are starting to hang out with the breathwork coach and the mindfulness coach, because they're all starting to blend at the rock climbing gym. They have the common language of the wall, and then they start talking like, oh shit, y'all are pretty badass, we're pretty badass, like let's be buddies.
Yeah.
So it happens.
And I think on that same note too, like, one of the biggest reasons why mental health is so bad in our population is like, what is your life outside of the uniform? For a lot of us, it's non-existent. It's getting drunk or your family, and like, alcohol in moderation is fine. Your family is obviously important, but like, if that's all you got, then
they can suck sometimes.
Probably,
I mean, let's be honest.
You're probably still missing out on something. So, especially with the military, like, part of why I feel so passionate about what I'm doing is, like, we would get out of work and most of my coworkers would just go straight back to the barracks and get drunk and watch Netflix or play video games until 3 a.m. and then go to work and do it all over again. It's like, why am I depressed right now? Look at what you're doing, so
zoom out just a touch.
Well, but they also, there's, that's the default, right? You have to be taught or shown or even motivated and inspired to do something other than that.
Right.
So I think, because sometimes you're like, yeah, I do see what I'm doing. I can't get out of it because I don't want to, because I don't have a motivation to. Why the fuck would I do that? So gosh, where does it start? It's almost like you just got to do the first one.
Yeah.
Like, if you go on that first hike, it makes you want to crave, more of it. So what's going to get you on that first hike? I think it's people like you that could take people by the hand and get them out there. But, in the quote unquote defense of the people sitting there watching Netflix and getting drunk, why else why would they not? That there's a lack. Okay, this comes back to the lack of purpose.
And
There's a lack of purpose.
I think a huge part of it is lack of identity, because
Yes,
if
absolutely.
you have this life outside of the job, then your job could be complete garbage, but you have this separate life to what you're doing. You're going to be fine. I got screamed at by my boss today, but I'm going to go climb and get it out of my system. Cool. You got it. If you don't have a life outside of the uniform and your life at work sucks, you're just going to suck. That's the brutal of it,
and that's also hitting burnout to a certain extent. That was me with YFFR. I was like so passionate about it, but I didn't have an identity outside of this. And, I got so many compliments on my work and this or that almost felt like pressure on me that, anyway, but that was it. I didn't have anything else besides YFFR. And I felt like if it went away, I would also cease to exist. So the pressure to keep it going, was just exorbitant. So when I finally did tons of tools, which included therapy and a bunch of other tools I use to basically my own yoga practice suffered because of offering so much yoga to other people. I remember like having just a meltdown saying like, what about me? And I just remember repeating that, what about me? What about me? What about my yoga practice? Like, stop, I needed to stop the train. I need to get off. I need to do my own breath work,
Right.
And I ended up taking 2 weeks off of YFFR, saying to the team, I hope it's here when I get back, but I don't really fucking care because I'm on the verge here. And I just went and invested in myself, found who I was beyond YFFR. So now I can step in, be effective, and also it's boundaries, right?
Yeah.
It's also having boundaries. And when you have an identity, then you have something to hold a boundary for.
And that's exactly what I'm trying to go for. And to answer your question earlier, the only kind of nagging point of aggravation, because I've gotten used to it for the most part from everybody, but it's just like I have a lot of people who are very much on the border, and they're always like, yeah, I'll go. I got to get into that. And then the few times I get someone like that to actually do it, they're like, my life has changed. This is incredible. I'm so glad I finally made it. And it's like, why did I have to fucking drag you here? Why did I have to remind you 50 times? Like, if you're in the area where I operate and you're hearing this and you're like on the fence, just try it once.
Of course, yeah.
You're gonna have to come back and hang out with me again, and everybody else at Stoke. But like, just give yourself the shot of trying it at least one time.
So, and that's what we tell people with yoga too, right? Like, show up one time. I'm curious about your long-term vision with Stoked. As we start.
And can I add to that too, to that question? Long-term vision, and also when you saw the YFFR training, and I know that you want yoga to be part of it, what was the goal? And also, I guess I want to be clear too, are there more people involved in Stoke, like more instructors or therapists or guides? So, or would you be the yoga instructor, the guide, the surf instructor? Well, how do you see YFFR fitting into the long-term goal that Eric's asking about?
So, long term, just to kind of bite off a little piece at a time, YFFR, I've already actually integrated it. You guys might be stoked to hear this. I did a breath work with the guys that I drive. I have some people that I just drive to the gym when we climb, that we all carpool together just to make their lives easier. And as we were driving there, I just did a practice class leading them through breath work. Like, I was behind the wheel, but I could still coach them, and it was awesome. They loved it.
I do a lot of breath work in the car, so love that.
I plan on just before climbing or before surfing, at the very least, doing breath work. Slowly working in yoga once people get more acquainted with the breath work and the discipline of it. Because I'm straight up with my guys, like, hey, this is discipline. You're going to give it respect. Like, this is an art. You guys are going to take it seriously if you're going to do it at all. It's not bullshit. So I make that real clear from the jump. Long term with Stoke as a whole, before I can do anything too crazy, I got to get my credentialing knocked out, and
Sure.
I want to start kind of growing the support base up so I can start doing bigger and better things with it. We've only been an entity for almost a year now, so it's not like we've had a lot of time to accrue people and support and whatnot. Like I have volunteers who help me do little things here and there, but not like a substantial team yet. When I have that, it's off to the races. I have huge plans. Like once I get my credentialing done, and if I can get a staff of other people who are credentialed, like I would like to find somebody who's a nutritionist, a physical therapist, all those types of things. My dream is to open a treatment center, like a kind of a, I don't want to say like a rehab facility, but we can take somebody who just got out of their 6th deployment with PTSD. They come to us for a month. We're going to teach them like, this is nutrition. This is stuff you can do for mobility. This is how you balance your finances. We're going to surf in the morning, do yoga in the morning. At night, we're going to climb, and we're going to sit around the fire and talk about our shit. Like, you're going to get every single piece of the puzzle that's going to make you feel down in the dumps or like you're living your life. That's my dream down the road. I mean, it's going to be a while before we get there, but once I make it happen, like that's my life vision and that's my purpose, really. Because I think it's things like that we need. Again, I think a lot of our answers are very doable for like the crisis that we're in. But it's got to come from within, and it's got to take a lot more people who are innovators like you guys. So I'm just glad I got to meet you guys and go through your course because it's absolutely going to help what I'm trying to do down the road.
Yeah, and I'm excited to have you on our episode here and to have you in our network now because, as you know, your network is everything. And I'm already thinking about people across the country who are doing similar type events or are thinking about opening up these kinds of retreats or even in the New Mexico area where we just have found some new people. It's like, okay, we've got a guy for you that you need to talk to see if you can plug him in or part of what he's doing. Like, so I'm super excited. And if people are listening out there across the country, like you're mobile. I mean, you're going to school, but you're also mobile.
He lives in a van. Of course he's mobile.
I mean,
you are on the fire department, so that does limit mobility at least for 10 days a month or so.
Yeah.
But there's ways around it. Like where I'm going with this is like if you're on one of the other coasts, like the left coast, for example, number one, you can start with just like a one-on-one call with you, I'd imagine. Like, so how do people engage with you at this point? Like that'd be good. How do people engage with you at this point?
So I keep it pretty simple. We have an Instagram account. They can just direct message from there.
What's the handle?
So it's Stoke Therapy Co. I just had to put Co in.
Right,
everything else was taken, unfortunately.
Sucks.
Really?
And then on the website, you can just fill out our contact form, and then I'll just email you or what have you. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, Stoked Therapy Co. on Instagram. That sounds like one of your primary ways, or Stoked Therapy.
There's no D. Stoke.
Stoked. My apologies.
No worries.
Stoked Therapy.
Did we ask before I got on where Stoke came from?
No. Yeah. What's the origin story of that? Because it's just obviously part of your vernacular. And
so yeah, I for a while there. So I look at extreme adventure sport athletes, which I would kind of consider myself. Like a lot of my buddies in that camp, I've always looked at people as either being on one side of the tracks or the other. Either you're like a maniac who's pushing your limits and crazy about it and super committed and dedicated and like the shit keeps you up at night and you get mad and frustrated if you don't you don't climb the route or whatever. Or you're somebody who's just stoked to be there. You're just happy. It doesn't matter if you make it or not. You're just happy to be around, happy to be in nature, just stoked. And I don't know. I was just like, I always found myself saying like, yeah, I'm just happy to be here, dude. Because like I've never been that great of a climber. I'm not an amazing ultra athlete. I like to think I'm okay at a lot of things, but like I would always have my handful of buddies who are those crazy dedicated like maniacs and just crushing it. And I'm barely doing half of what they are, but I'm always just stoked anyway. Right. So like, I just kind of I'm stoked to be here, and that's what I shoot for.
You know what? That's my new CD for if someone's listening for the first time. CDs are what we call the cognitive declarations, or my computer's going to die. So I'm going to come out just as I came in, like all of a sudden. Yeah, because now I can't plug on it. Anyway, so CD's cognitive declaration, like mental message, changing our mental framing. And I love that one. I'm going to start using, like, I'm stoked. Like when I'm tremoring, when I'm whatever, I'm just stoked to be here. I'm stoked for the fact that I have a body that actually can move and do all this stuff. I think that's an amazing CD. So that can be like your official YFFR CD for your Stoke classes.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, man. No, I mean, I truly, you're a visionary, and this is kind of weird. It's like the first time in my life where like I get to like watch like the next group, like
generation.
I know I don't want to use that word, but I mean, I just had a birthday, so it's putting things into perspective a little bit too, I guess.
Yeah.
But
you're in definitely like 2 decades away. We're in our 40s. Exactly. You're in your 20s.
Right, exactly right. And what I'm super excited about is that like I don't meet too many people of your age with your capacity, background, that kind of stuff, with the drive, and it's just like, man, like if I was at where for the first time, it's like I wish I was where you are at when I was your age, like with that vision, with that plan, with that foresight, with the visionary parts and pieces of it. And so I'm super excited for you, Sir Gage, and what you bring and the future that you are creating with the universe, quite frankly, because it's awesome, it's epic, it's bright. And I'm not saying that I'm on my twilight years. I still have a long fucking way to go. And so we can do a lot of this together and have a hell of a good time, at the same time for a very, very long time. And so I'm honestly, thank you for wanting to come onto the episode and onto the show with us. This is still in its nascent state, its founding state as a podcast. And so I'm happy you're excited to join us and share your vision and your mission with us too.
I think our podcast is the same age as your nonprofit. So we're in the infancy together with that. But, the first time I taught first responders yoga properly, like in the fire department, was 11 years ago. And and we've been a nonprofit organization for 8 years. And only now we're getting our operational structure behind the scenes. Like you said, if you had the people, it would all, but I just thought to myself, okay, in 8 years, if, where we are now in terms of the nonprofit growth, you're only 35 years old.
Right.
That's so cool.
That and learn from those who have gone before you. So study what we've done right, what we've done wrong.
Yeah, then you could do it in 4 years.
Yeah, do it in 2 years. Like kick ass, take names, and go forth and conquer, as they say. Super excited for you, man. Any final Gage wisdom you want to leave as a parting thought before we let our listeners go?
I mean, well, just first, humbled and very appreciative for you guys saying everything you just did. It's awesome. I'm very honored to be here, so thank you. Final words of wisdom. Don't be afraid to get outside of your comfort zone, because everything that I've found that's worth living for is outside of the comfort zone. That is where your growth comes from. That's where a lot of my happiness and that's how I'm stoked. That's how I get there. It's just getting outside of my comfort zone, pushing myself and doing things that are healthy. So don't be scared to take that first step, because it might be the best thing you've ever done for yourself.
That's how I'm going to live today, for sure. Gage is living in his 4%, man. You are in your 4% zone. That's awesome. Thank you so much for your time, and you are the dream trainee at instructor school. So thank you for that too.
I'm glad to hear you guys say that, because I was worried if I was going to be a good student or not.
You are the perfect student.
Hell yeah, thanks, guys.
All good.
Hey, before we go, I want to remind you that training your mental and physical health is incredibly important, especially for those working in high-stress jobs like first responders.
And if you're interested in learning more about yoga for first responders, visit yogaforfirstresponders.org for our on-demand training app. online course platform, in-person training, and more.
Like this podcast, subscribe, and give us a great review. We are so happy to have you part of the YFFR mission.